mean tracks and the rest of it, there are no countries in the world where the system is so vertically integrated. And this has to do with the way the railways evolved. So if one is ever expecting the tracks to be unbundled in any fashion, even privately owned, it's going to be very tough, pretty close to impossible. You raise the question of the private sector running trains. Technically, I don't know how many people here know that the private sector is already allowed to run trains. Things like what was the Kings and Cox train? That was a private sector train originally. The problem with the private sector running a train is that because of the serious capacity constraints, the railways today cannot guarantee a specific time when a train that leaves point A will actually reach point B. Particularly in the routes that everyone is going to be interested in. If you're interested in something like Jodhpur and Jaisalmer, which no private sector operator will be interested in, there's plenty of free capacity. You also raised a question about the private sector being allowed to charge its own fares. I'm looking at you because you are the one who raised those questions. In the earlier session, that one is easier. It requires certain changes in the Railways Act, politics permitting. But what is close to impossible is for the driver to be private, because there are safety issues. So the trains is one part, the locomotive is another. The private train is doable. That also, once the capacity constraint improves, what is certainly possible even today is if I have a Rajdhani, 2 coaches are private. That kind of thing is doable. Now we move on. Oh, by the way, on PPP, again, I presume everyone knows the word PPP. I dislike it because it means all kinds of different things. But I presume you all know what it means. There is soon going to be a speedier dispute resolution mechanism. And PPPs have been plagued, not just for the railways generally, by complicated dispute resolution. Last person, Mr. Will.
Good afternoon, everyone. How much time do I have, Dr. Bro? 7 minutes. Thank you. Well, we saw a lot of numbers, and I was told not to have a PowerPoint, and I don't intend to talk in technical terms and languages. I just want to take some of the information which I've got from the panelists and from the previous speakers. Unfortunately, I was not able to make to the minister's speech, which I've learned. It was amazing. Some of the things which I noticed was the first session which is on investments, not on consumer needs, not on customer service, not on multi-mode transportation, but on investments. And the question which sort of I asked myself was, that shows the importance of economics, the capital, and also it highlights the need for relative quick investment in the infrastructure, and especially in India. Technically speaking, India in growth has been amazing in the world. GDP growth has been very good, the youngest population, there's massive opportunities. Still, if the investments is the first session, so the question probably we need to ask, do we still lack the investments needed to unleash the potential? And I would agree, probably everyone would agree to this, that there's investment we could have more investments. And is it lack of investment generally in the market, which I guess in this audience doesn't seem to, because there are a lot of investors here, there are a lot of technical service providers here. So in that technical terms as well, there's nothing which is not achievable. what do the investors look at? And when we are doing projects, it's quite common, like investors look at the future. They actually do not look at profitability as well, and even a very business-minded investors don't look at profitability. Look at companies, private companies, Uber, Amazon, there's others, Tesla, they've been losing money for years, and billions of dollars, we are not talking of small sums. So what is required for investor confidence is future, planning for the future, showing that the Indian Railways will deliver the infrastructure for the future that will unleash the potential that is in the country, the youngest workforce on the planet. And I was also noting taking some notes down here. And infrastructure is very important. And to have economic motors, you need good governance and infrastructure. And the quality of this will give you the quality of the economic development. If you look at the very basics of economic engines today in the world, it's driven by the people movement, the goods movement, the knowledge transaction, and economic transaction. The quality and the volume of these transactions and the flows is the size of the economy. You look the places close to Mumbai, Singapore, Hong Kong, Dubai, do not necessarily are rich in the natural resources. They're giving the right infrastructure and a transparent governance to some extent. Obviously, Indian Railways is a massive organization and they have their own challenges, the social and political challenges. But still, there's examples available. And to achieve those, the technical solutions are available. We have a telecom sector is a good advantage where investments could come in. We have lawyers who have access to the investors. We have investors here, and we have all these people here who are obviously interested and who actually believe in the story of Indian Railways, maybe not as much as it is needed by the railways, and even though the government is keen. And I actually don't know what the solution is, but these are just my thoughts, which I'm putting it out, and probably for the panel to discuss. Another sort of my note thing was, what is missing? Why is it, if we have all the possibilities, technically it is possible to have the most efficient transportation system on the planet here. It's done in the airport infrastructure, as we heard before. It could be done in railways. The next step would be to make it sustainable. And to do that, we have to start decoupling the GDP growth to the environmental resources. The energy consumption, the environmental degradation to GDP growth needs to be decoupled. And these measures are being already taken. They're already being taken by the big economies like London. We saw the massive recession, and London actually survived quite well, considering the total impact of the recession in whole of UK, whole of Europe. So these hubs remain, and they have been able to attract investment and generate a GDP growth without to increase in infrastructure that will consume natural resources. So for sustainable and economic generation over a long time, the infrastructure and governance is very important to support that. Well, I will make it very short. My name is Will Sibia. It's written backwards there. I come from a small village in Punjab, use the railway infrastructure quite a lot. And at the moment, I'm representing SWACO. We're Europe's largest planners and designers. And we are delivering high-performing, sustainable built environment to probably the most livable cities on the planet. Thank you.
Thank you. The floor is now open. Rules of the game, please be brief. Remember that the longer the question, the shorter the answer will be. So if you want long answers, short questions, please mention who the question is directed at. I suggest we will collect some questions and then turn to the panelists. Yes, please, I see a hand here. Yes.
So the question could be answered by you, Mr. Debroy or Namita ji. We heard that we all
The
know
chairman does not answer questions unless he happens to be the chairman of the railway board. So, Namita.
that you decide. We all know that the Japanese loan coming for the high speed is very attractive. I just wanted to ask how attractive it really is. Where is the exchange risk lying? When is the first tranche coming? On a full life cycle basis, do we know in concrete terms how advantageous it is?
Behind you, Hari, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. This is a question from Mrs. Mehrotra. Ma'am, can you park some of your 50-year 0.1% funds with us? We could use it very comfortably. Number two is on the issue of equity ownership in the SPV. We had the exact same problem NHI, and they have changed their model completely. They permit the concessionaire to sell equity after certain specific milestones achieved. I would strongly urge you to consider that in the railway documentation, otherwise you'll find it very difficult to get good investors to come in.
Thank you, Chair. My question is, actually it was to you, but since you declined, I guess I'll go to Ms. Mehrotra and also to Mr. Singh, that since the railway is not rapidly privatizing itself, as we heard today and also from your outstanding speech, sir, what is the independent regulator going to do? Because if the issue is only about concession agreements and adjudication, as you said, possibly under the Kelkar report, some reform is on way. So what would the independent railway do? Because the capacity of independent regulators to regulate public sector undertakings is rather low, as is demonstrated by the electricity, the problems of the reform of the distribution grids in the electricity sector.
I'll leave it to Namita. I'll leave it to Namita to
I have a
answer
question,
that.
sir.
But let me give my quick reactions to your question. When we prepared the report, I'm giving a bulleted answer. When we drafted the report, it was not only about tariffs. It was about access to track. Because one of the most important deterrents to private sector entry is access to track. That's what I meant by rules of competition, enforcing rules of competition. So the idea was that the Railway Ministry formulates policy, including rules of competition. The independent regulator enforces that policy. And the railway board remains a board for the public sector provider because they will presumably be private operators also. So that was the three-layered structure. In addition, as a committee, we felt that the freight sector was amenable to completely market-based freight determination. So the regulator, as we contemplated it, does not interfere in freight tariffs. The regulator does intervene in the case of passenger tariffs because the market is not yet fully developed. And finally, the railways can never be completely commercial. They will have to have the social cost kind of obligations that the minister mentioned. Who determines what the true social costs are? We had recommended in the committee that the social costs are determined by the regulator working closely with the CAG. So those were the bulleted kind of responsibilities. There's much more. I saw two hands at the back.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm Advocate Aditya Pratap, and my question is to Mr. Dhingra and the other members, because on the topic of PPP.
Just name one.
Yes.
Mr. Dhingra.
To Mr. Dhingra, because you specifically dealt
Yeah,
with the subject.
Okay.
You in your presentation espoused the benefits of public-private partnerships across every project. Now, as we know, transparency and accountability is a very important part of any project. And one thing I've seen with many PPPs, especially in airports, is that they claim to be exempt from the RTI Act. Will it be so with the railways also? Should not public-private partnerships be governed by the RTI Act and make their functioning transparent and accountable? That's my question.
Okay, so one hand there and last hand there, yes.
My question to Ms. Mehrotra on now with the challenge in terms of revenue not growing for Indian Railways, and on other side you have a commitment of 30,000 crore for pay commission. Would it be possible to spend 1,21,000 crores of the budgeted amount? And in initial presentation you mentioned about that we'll have a 5x multiplier effect of the investment. So till date, why we are not able to see that impact if we have spent so much? And if you can give some numbers, how much we are planning to, in terms of how much we have actually spent in the current year, how much ordering has been done? Thank you.
Okay, last hand at
Yep.
the back there.
This is for Mr. Mehrotra. This is Anil Saldana from Sci Enterprise. Two specific issues. One is related to design approval by RDSO. The time it takes to, from the time you make an application to the time a design is cleared, can take anywhere between 2 to 3 years. I think we need to have some mechanism to fast-track design clearance. And second, in terms of the PPP, we have this situation where for an SFTO or AFTO, the annual rate hike in haulage is a unilateral decision by the railways. It would be far better if a escalation formula was built into the concession agreement so that then it can be transparently passed on to the customers of the rail operators. Thank you.
Mr. Dhingra, first you. She needs more time to think. I'm giving her more time.
I think the specific question you have asked about the PPP and the RTI Act related to that. Currently, PPI, wherever PPI is there, RTI Act is not applicable. But the moment you specify the parameters of RTI which gets into the PPP, because today if you see no private companies come to the RTI. So obviously the parameters of RTI have to be defined in case you would like to be addressed in the PPP. Currently it is not there, but I don't think it is impossible. Obviously the debate has to take place whether it is feasible or not. Thank you.
I think Mr. Kuldeep Singh should respond on this also.
Actually, I wanted to add something to the regulator and tariff thing. You said that track sharing may not be practical because of operational issues and safety issues. But you said that the wagons can be coaches can be attached to the trains.
I didn't want to confuse everyone, but now I'm going to confuse everyone. What you can do is not have private tracks, but auction paths.
Okay.
Paths is possible given the capacity constraint, but not the track itself.
Okay. So whether we are talking about paths or whether we are talking about allowing wagons to be attached, whether for freight or for passengers, there are three very important issues which arise in these. One is that who will decide whom to allow these wagons, because there may be many players who may be wanting to add that. Who will decide that? Whether it will be the regulator, whether it will be the government, or whether it will be the railways. The second question is, which arises is that what tariff will be charged by the railways for this facility, for allowing the track to be shared. And the third question is that what tariff will be charged by the operator from the end user, and whether they are required to be regulated. My view is that the first part, that who will decide whom to allow, should be left, I think, should be part of the regulator, which is unfortunately not there in the telecom sector. In telecom sector, licensing is done by the government. The interface and the connection between various operators is governed by the regulator. On licensing, regulator can only advise the government. But I think if you see the FCC model in telecommunication, the licensing also is done by the FCC. I think it would be better left to the regulator rather than because of certain reasons which I think the time will not permit right now. As far as the tariffs are concerned, the first part, which is what railway should charge for the wagons or the facility or track, should be governed by the, should be regulated. And again, it should be done by the regulator. And it could be a cost plus model where railway, because railway has to subsidize a lot of things, it could be a cost plus model. But the last part, where if we are talking about premium services or private sector, since the railway is already offering other services, the last part I think can be left to the market forces, what is charged from the end user, ensuring that sufficient wagons, sufficient players are allowed to operate these services, then that last part can be left to the market forces. I think this is what I
Before turning to Namita for what is the last word, just in case people here don't know, there is still track infrastructure in one part of India which is owned by a private company. And the track is leased out to Central Zone, which runs a train there called Shakuntala Express. People forgot about it when the tracks were nationalized. So this contract is negotiated. It is coming up for renewal in the year 2016. Completely privately owned track. Yeah, yours is the last word.
Regarding the JICA loan conditions for high-speed rail, the individual loan negotiations have not started as yet. But till now, the way the JICA funds have flown, that they normally flow through the central government, and the finance ministry takes the exchange rate risk. And it is passed on to the borrowing entity, including they provide for that exchange risk, and that is how it is provided on to the borrowing entity. So in the case of DFC, for example, Railways is paying at the rate of 7%, whereas the loan is at a much lower rate to the central government. So they have built in the exchange rate fluctuation risk in that. So this will finally be decided once the first loan negotiation starts. Second thing, regarding equity investments, we'll check that out, and we'll see if that I'll take this issue back to the board, to the railway board, to the concerned people, and we can check it out with the NHAI contracts, because I think there something 2 years after COD or something it has been allowed. So maybe if in our contracts it's not there, we'll take it back. Then role of regulators, sir has already more or less said, or we've had a discussion on this, but I'll just give you the status of this, that right now what is being intended is that pending going to the pending seeking legislative approval, and through an executive order, it is proposed to set up the regulator. The Railways Act, do not permit us to allow a regulator through an executive order to mandate tariff fixation. So maybe at this stage, the role would be recommendatory. This issue, when it is taken for legislative approval, then this issue will be further decided. But right now, recommendation on tariff, setting service level benchmarks for railways. And third is, of course, the private sector areas related to private sector engagement. That has been taken up. So perhaps the issue that was raised by one of the participants relating to AFTO and SFTO would then get covered in that, where you are saying that there is no predictability and about the rates, etc. So perhaps that issue at that stage would get covered under this, because we have a lot of wagon leasing, container train operators. So to give comfort to them and to take care of their problems, this would be covered by the regulator through that process. There was an issue, a question related to our having a capital investment program of 1,21,000 and meeting the pay commission. The railway budget has two parts. One is the capital expenditure, the other is the revenue part. The revenue part we meet through the freight and passenger revenues that we generate. The capital investment program is partly funded through the budgetary support that we get, the borrowing program. A small part of it comes through the internal surpluses. So as it is budgeted today, there is sufficient amount. It was budgeted, the pay commission payouts were budgeted in the 16-17 budget. So as of now, we don't, there is no impact on the capital investment program, so to say. Then there is one issue of design clearance about this RDSO. I just wanted to inform, as I said in the presentation, that we are creating a separate research organization. So the function of RDSO, the research part of the RDSO is perhaps may be hived off. These things are still under consideration. And I will carry back to my organization this issue regarding delay in design approval. Thank you.
Okay. I found it very informative and educative, so will you please join me in thanking all the panelists for a very... Housekeeping announcements.
Well, we would like to also express our gratitude in the form of mementos. As the session chair, I would request Mr. Debroy to please present mementos to the panelists. Mr. Kuldeep Singh, ex-member TDSAT. Madam Namita Mehrotra, ED Resource Mobilization, Ministry of Railways. Mr. Harsh Dhingra, Managing Director, Bombardier India. Mr. Aviroop Nag, Partner, Indus Law. And Mr. Sibia Will from SWECO. Could I request Mr. Deepak Premnarayan, President IMC, to please present a memento to the session chair, Mr. Bibek Debroy, Member Niti Aayog. Yes, that indeed was an engaging session. Lunch has been arranged in the foyer outside. It is 1:10. If I could request you to be back 5 minutes prior to 2 o'clock, so we will begin the next session at 2 sharp. I have a few announcements to be made. Kindly note that a knowledge paper published by McKinsey is provided in the conference kit. Do take a look. It contains research and analysis on Indian Railways. There is an issue paper prepared by Mr. Sanjeev Singh Ahluwalia, eminent retired civil services officers. This paper contains issues to be discussed in all the sessions. One technical session is over, but we have 2 more technical sessions to go. The delegate kit, which you can see on the tables, you're carrying those delegate kits. These are made from eco-friendly, recycled material by Gulmeher. They have a stall in this room. You can visit the stall. They have exhibited their products. These are made by women who were initially rack pickers. They have been trained by ILFS CSR initiative. We will also play a video and a film on URC post-lunch. So take note and be back by before 2 o'clock. So we begin the session in time. Also, the entire conference, this one-day event, has been live webcast on imcnet.org. So all those who could not make it in person to the venue may be informed that this event is being live webcast on imcnet.org. Thank you.